Hey friends, happy Friday to you all. I'm excited to be here on my weekly Facebook Live with you guys every Friday at 1 p.m. I answer one of your questions. So, this is a question that was submitted by a man who had been struggling with unwanted sexual behavior. And the question is, what is the most impactful strategy for rebuilding trust with my wife? So, I love that this man's heart is that he wants to rebuild trust with his wife. This is a great question. I want to break down sexual betrayal, where somebody has unwanted sexual behavior and that has impacted their spouse, into two main areas of hurt. Now, there's a million other areas, but if you have to boil it down to the two most hurtful aspects, one aspect is the lies or deception, because unwanted sexual behavior is always coupled with shame, and hiding and lying are always part of shame. So typically, there's been some level of deception and lies in the relationship, and that is extremely damaging to trust. The other big part of sexual betrayal that is so painful for that marriage is the actual sexual behavior. So the sexual behavior it literally forms like a soul tie with the other person that you've been sexual with, whether pixelated or in the flesh. And it literally does break down the bond between you and your spouse and increases the bond between you and whatever your object of sexual desire is. So the violation of the covenant is really more than anything like a sinkhole in the middle of the foundation of the marriage. So I learned this analogy from Leslie Vernick, and I do love analogies because these issues of deception and infidelity are so confusing and difficult to see if you haven't gone through it. It's really difficult to understand how it's impacting the person that's been betrayed and how it's impacting the marriage. And so Leslie said, let's say your marriage is a house. And so you have the walls, the roof, all these different aspects of the house. And the foundation, the very foundation of that house, has a massive sinkhole in it. That is an accurate representation of the problem of any of the three major A's. Okay, these are not marriage issues, they are completely different issues that need to be addressed separate from working on the marriage. And the three A's are addiction, or any kind of addiction, really, affairs or adultery, and abuse. And so typically with sexual betrayal, you will have, not always, but oftentimes, an addiction involved, sexual addiction. And then definitely the adultery part, whether pixelated or in the flesh. And so you've got these major sinkhole level issues. And a lot of times what people helpers and even the person who had the unwanted sexual behavior want to do is paint the walls or reshingle the roof or do other things to try to make everything better, when what needs to be addressed first and foremost is the sinkhole of how that foundation of trust has been demolished. So we've got to address the root issue. The best and first and foremost strategy you can do to rebuild trust with your spouse is to work on your recovery process, to work on restoring your sexual integrity, on becoming honest and true to God, to yourself, developing deep, authentic relationship with Jesus, with other people that can help you walk towards freedom. That has got to come first, because if you can't sustain freedom from unwanted sexual behavior, if you can't live out the fidelity that you want to live out, there is not going to be any chance of trust. Now, I will like to say this issue of trust in a marriage comes up all the time. And I know why. It's because trust is super important in a relationship. Where there is no trust, you can't have a relationship grow. However, I do want to challenge everybody with this concept that there is not one verse in the Bible that I know of, and if you do, please comment, because I'd love to know if I'm wrong, but there's not one verse in the Bible that says trust your husband or trust your wife. The scriptures encourage us over and over and over again to trust in the Lord, trust in God. And so I just want to encourage both the person who wrote this question about, hey, how do I rebuild trust with my wife? That this is not a process that can be rushed. Trust must be earned, and trust is not indefinite, nor is it unconditional. So when there's been infidelity, porn addiction, things like that, the trust is automatically going to be gone, and it will take like a lot of time to rebuild it. You're doing what you say you're going to do, working on your recovery, and your attitude are probably the three biggest things you can do to start to rebuild trust. So, none of those things, notice, none of those things are actually directly about fixing something in your marriage. They're all about your personal integrity and rebuilding that and being where you say you're going to be. And your words will mean nothing to her for a while. So you can tell her every day, oh my gosh, I woke up, I spent time in prayer, I spent time with God, I did this, I did that. And if your main motive and heart is to try to prove to her, look, I'm becoming a man of God, I'm becoming a man of integrity, she will sense that that's your motive. I have seen other couples where that knowledge to a wife, where the husband is meeting with the Lord and he's meeting with his recovery guys and he's connecting, is really deeply meaningful, but she needs to see that happen over and over and over again for days, weeks, months, year plus before she really is going to trust in it, that it's not just a plea to win her trust back only to yank the rug out from under her again. So the best thing you can do is not focus on, oh, I'm going to, do you trust me now? Do you trust me now? If you focus on that, you're missing the point. Focus on rebuilding the foundation, which is your integrity, your truthfulness, your trustworthiness. We tell women all the time in our Women in the Battle groups, believe the behavior, not the words. The behavior consists of what you do. So if you say you really want to be free, make your recovery a high, high, high priority. Make your relationship with God, engaging with Him, not just religious activity, but actually getting vulnerable with God and with other people that can help you and are on the path ahead of you, is a massive trust builder, but it's not quick. It takes time. Now, the experts, say that it can take 3 to 5 years to rebuild a marriage after sexual betrayal. That is extremely discouraging to most people. I was just walking with one of my dear friends who went through betrayal. Her world blew up 2.5 years ago. It was a rough, I would say, 8 months. Then they started to rebuild. And 2.5 years after her betrayal, their marriage is so solid. I think it can happen much quicker than 3 to 5 years. It really depends on how quickly, or not how quickly, how deeply each person works on their stuff. Also, how willing the person who has the unwanted sexual behavior is to do whatever the experts, the leaders, the teachers, the therapists in their life who are experts in sexual addiction issues or sexual integrity issues, whatever they say and whatever their spouse asks for. So if a spouse asks for a therapeutic disclosure and a polygraph, the willingness on the part of the person with the unwanted sexual behavior to say, yes, I'll do that for you. That is a big, huge block of trust building. It's not the end all be all, but it is another trust. In fact, the friend of mine that I was walking with was saying, she said to me, it's just the idea that he's willing to take a polygraph. They only do one once a year now. They had their full therapeutic disclosure less than 2 years ago, and she doesn't need continual polygraphs. She says to me, it's enough. It's enough to know that he's just willing, like he's got nothing to hide. And so I think trust can be rebuilt. There's absolutely hope for this. It just, the goal and the hope is not just, let me rebuild trust. It's got to be, I want freedom. And you have to want it for yourself, not just for her. Because it's got to be a higher motive of like, I want to be free. I want to live with integrity. I want to live a life and become the man that God has created me to be. Another thing that really can help is to be attentive to her needs. So this can rebuild relational trust over time. So a lot of times our temptation when somebody's hurting and we know that we caused their hurt, our temptation is to be defensive or angry or to end up DARVOing them. So DARVO stands for deny, attack, reverse victim offender. So we don't necessarily outright deny it, like, I didn't do that, but denial can come in lots of different forms. It can be, gosh, it wasn't that bad. Kind of minimizing is a form of denial. And then all of a sudden attacking and reversing who's the victim and who's the offender. So if your spouse is lamenting about her pain and you turn it around somehow and all of a sudden make it about you and how you're suffering, that is known as DARVO. It is actually a form of gaslighting. And it is psychologically manipulative. So if you're doing that, that is going to destroy any kind of trust you're building by doing your recovery work. However, in contrast, if you listen to her and you look her in the eye and you sincerely care about her, and I realize we talked last week about building empathy. It takes time. Watch that video if you haven't already in my Facebook Live from last week. But if you are truly working on building your empathy muscles, and all you need to do is sit there, be present, look her in the eye, and say, I am so sorry. I know it doesn't feel adequate. It feels like I'm not helping anything when I say I'm so sorry, but there's really nothing you can do or say to fix what you already did in the past, except, to move forward with integrity and to be present to your spouse in their pain and even acknowledging that you did this to them. I know that feels horrible to you. Like it feels like, oh my gosh, it's just going to light my shame fire again. And that's where you have to go to your people in your recovery circle and dump out your pain and your shame onto them, not on your spouse that you betrayed. That it can be likened to, this is from Dr. Doug Weiss. He uses the analogy, if you are complaining to your wife about the pain you're in because of what has happened in your marriage with the sexual betrayal stuff, it's like you just took an Uzi and shot her and she's laying on the floor bleeding out and you're complaining about your trigger finger. It's just not helpful and it's kind of ridiculous, to be honest. Now, I'm not saying you're not in pain. You have your own pain. That's what led to your unwanted sexual behavior in the first place. You probably have years and years of pain. You may even feel really hurt by things your spouse has done to you in the past. But when you compare the things that they have done in the past to this recent knowledge of finding out that you've been lying about your sexual behavior, that's not the time to bring up all the past hurt. There can be time for that, but you cannot turn it around and blame what you did on your spouse, or you're going to create a huge mess and it's not going to rebuild trust. So go to your people, go to your inner recovery circle and share your heart. Your heart matters and it's important, but your spouse who's been betrayed cannot be the person to receive that grief. If she senses that you are attentive to her needs and you allow her to have her grief and you sit with her in it, it's pretty simple to sit there in it. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but you don't need to fix it except for to do the right thing and keep working on your recovery and be present. That will go a lot further than having any kind of right answers. Do whatever she asks you to do. Michael, my husband, says to guys, hey, if she asks you to kill yourself, don't do that. But otherwise, do whatever she asks you to do. She asks you to turn on Life 360 so she knows what time you leave the office. Do it. If she asks you to have a polygraph, do it. If she asks you to go see a certified sex addiction therapist, do that. Because if she's working her own recovery program, she's going to be getting guidance on what she needs to start to feel safe again. I am so thankful that I got to spend this time with you guys. I would love your comments. I would love your suggestions of other topics you'd like me to cover in future Facebook Lives, and I'll see you next Friday at 1.